For 5 years, I perfected the art of being unseen. It took Frederick Marino exactly one glance to destroy everything I'd built. The Marino estate breathed at midnight like a living thing, marble exhaling cold beneath my knees, chandeliers dimmed to a predatory glow, the ghost of cigar smoke curling through halls where men made deals that ended lives. My world was bleach and silence, the rhythmic swish of my mop against floors polished to mirrors, the distant echo of laughter from rooms I would never enter. I was the night janitor. I was furniture. I was air. My reflection caught in a service window. Blonde hair tied back, so tight it pulled at my temples, dark circles carved beneath hazel eyes that had learned not to look up, the gray uniform that marked me as part of the machinery. 26 years old, but the fluorescent lights made me look ghost-like, faded. That's how I preferred it. In a house where power moved like smoke and disappeared men left only whispers behind, being noticed was the same as being sentenced. But the mansion had different rules after midnight. The marble halls stretched endless and golden, lined with Renaissance paintings whose subjects seemed to watch me with knowing eyes. The air here tasted expensive, bergamot and leather, old money and new violence. I moved through it like a shadow through water, careful not to disturb the surface. That's when the atmosphere shifted. It didn't sound exactly, more like pressure dropping before a storm. The kind of silence that makes your survival instincts scream. I kept my head down, focusing on the baseboards near the private study. Just finish this section. Get back to the service quarters. Stay invisible. Look at me when you're in my hallway. The voice cut through the silence like a blade wrapped in velvet, quiet, absolute, with the faint trace of an Italian accent that turned every syllable into a command. My body obeyed before my mind could resist, my head lifting, mop handle trembling in my grip. He stood 15 feet away, silhouetted against the amber light spilling from his study. Tall, broad-shouldered, perfectly tailored even at this hour. Black shirt open at the collar, sleeves rolled to his forearms, revealing tattoos that disappeared beneath expensive fabric. Dark hair slightly disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it. Strong jaws shadowed with stubble that looked more like a choice than carelessness. But it was his eyes that trapped me. Amber like whiskey held to the firelight, and just as intoxicating. They moved over my face with the slow deliberation of someone cataloging every detail, the exhaustion written in my bones, the fading bruise on my wrist from carrying supply boxes, the way my pulse hammered visibly in my throat. Frederick Marino. I knew his name the way everyone who worked here knew it, whispered, feared, never spoken above a breath. The man who controlled half the city's underground with nothing more than a gesture. The predator who ruled this cage. I'm sorry, sir. The words caught in my throat. I didn't realize anyone was still. 3 years. He tilted his head slightly, studying me like I was a painting he'd never noticed before. You've been here 3 years, and I never realized the janitor had eyes like that. The mop slipped from my fingers, clattering against marble that caught and amplified the sound. That's when invisibility died. His mouth curved, not quite a smile, something darker. What's your name? Every instinct screamed at me to lie, to run, to disappear back into the gray uniform and anonymous hallways. But those amber eyes held me pinned like a butterfly to velvet. Dalia, I whispered. Dalia Cruz. Dalia. He repeated it slowly, turning my ordinary name into something that felt like possession. Like a signature written across my life in ink I couldn't erase. You look exhausted. The personal observation stunned me. Men like him didn't notice women like me, didn't ask, didn't care, didn't see past the utility we provided. I'm fine. I managed the lie automatic. I didn't ask if you were fine. His voice remained soft, but something in it made the temperature drop. I asked if you always look this exhausted. The truth escaped before I could stop it. Yes. He nodded once, as if I'd confirmed something important. Then he stepped closer, just one step, but it swallowed half the distance between us. Close enough that I could smell his cologne, woodsy and dark, expensive as everything else in this house. Do you know what I do, Dalia? I swallowed hard. Yes. Good. Another step. Then you understand that when I notice something, it becomes mine. My heart hammered against my ribs. I should finish. You're finished for tonight. He reached past me. I flinched instinctively, but he only picked up my mop, leaning it carefully against the wall. Go home. Get some sleep. It sounded like kindness. It felt like a trap. I backed away slowly, grabbing my supply cart with shaking hands. His eyes followed every movement, tracking me with the patience of something that knew its prey couldn't escape. I made it 3 steps before his voice stopped me. Dalia. I froze and didn't turn around. You dropped something. Confused, I glanced back. I hadn't been carrying anything except cleaning supplies. He held out a small cream envelope between 2 fingers. Consider it a bonus. I don't accept. Take it. Not a request. I walked back on trembling legs, reaching for the envelope, but his fingers held firm, forcing me to meet his gaze one more time. Those amber eyes burned with something I couldn't name: curiosity, calculation, hunger barely leashed. Until next time, he said quietly, finally releasing the envelope. I fled. Only in the safety of the service elevator, hands shaking so badly I could barely press the button, did I open the envelope. Inside, a single card, heavy cream cardstock with an embossed gold number. No name. No explanation. And on the back, written in elegant script, you were invisible. Now you're not. I stared at those words as the elevator descended, my reflection ghost-like in the polished steel doors. Somewhere above me, in those golden marble halls, Frederick Marino stood watching the security feed. And for the first time in 5 years, I realized my invisibility hadn't been protected. It had been a countdown. Now the clock had run out. Fire if you're already hooked, hit that like button and drop a comment with your location. Where are you watching from? And what do you think happens next? Comment below. Woman running if Dalia should run. Or Ive if you think Frederick's obsession is just getting started. Subscribe so you don't miss out, because things are about to get dangerous. I hadn't always been invisible. Once, I'd had dreams that extended beyond mop buckets and midnight shifts. But that was before my father's diagnosis, before the medical bills buried us, before I learned that survival meant disappearing into whatever space would pay enough to keep him breathing. The Marino estate needed a night janitor willing to work alone, to see nothing, to be nothing. I'd been perfect for the job. Until tonight. Until Frederick Marino looked at me through that mirror and decided invisibility wasn't an option anymore. For 3 nights, I became a ghost again. I rearranged my schedule, took the service stairs instead of the main halls, cleaned the east wing when I knew Frederick occupied the west. I moved through the Marino estate like smoke, there and not there, praying that our encounter had been nothing more than late-night curiosity from a bored predator. But the card stayed in my pocket, heavy as a stone. You were invisible. Now you're not. On the 4th night, my supervisor cornered me in the supply room. Elena, a woman whose face had forgotten how to smile somewhere in her 50 years of service to the Marinos, thrust a clipboard at my chest. 3rd floor. Mr. Marino's private study. Her eyes held a warning I couldn't read. The late meeting just ended. Needs immediate attention. My stomach dropped. Can't, Marco. Mr. Marino requested you specifically. She turned away, conversation over. Don't make him wait. The 3rd floor stretched silent and vast, thick carpet muffling my footsteps as I wheeled my cart down the corridor. Sconces cast pools of amber light that made the shadows between them feel alive, watching. Frederick's study sat at the end of the hall, double doors of dark mahogany standing slightly ajar. I paused outside, listening. Nothing. Just the distant hum of the estate settling into sleep, the whisper of my own terrified breathing. Get in. Clean. Get out. The study was exactly what I'd imagined. Leather and power, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves holding first editions I'd never be allowed to touch, a massive desk positioned to face the door like a throne. The air smelled of cigars and something metallic underneath. Blood, old and faint, woven into the room's history. I kept my eyes down, focusing on the marble floor that reflected the room in perfect, unforgiving detail. Start with the corners. Work your way inward.
Don't look at the desk.
Don't think about what decisions were made here, what sentences were pronounced in this space where even the walls kept secrets. But something white caught my eye near the leather armchair. A handkerchief, crumpled on the floor. Expensive silk, monogrammed with elegant initials. FM. And stained with blood. My hand hesitated over it. Everything in the Marino house had a purpose, a place. Nothing was left accidentally. But leaving blood-stained evidence felt worse than touching it, so I picked it up carefully, turning it over in my palm. The blood was recent, still tacky, still speaking of whatever violence had occurred hours ago in this very room. That's mine. I spun around, the handkerchief clutched against my chest. Frederick stood in the doorway, jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled up, tie loosened around his neck. He looked different than he had in the hallway, less controlled, edges sharper, like the veneer of civilization had worn thin over the course of whatever meeting had just ended. His knuckles, I noticed, were split and bruised. The words tangled in my throat.
Cleaning.
He stepped inside, closing the door behind him with a soft click that sounded like a lock engaging.
Yes.
That's what you do. He moved to the bar cart, poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a crystal glass. The silence stretched between us, taut as wire. I should apologize, run, disappear. Instead, I stood frozen, watching his reflection in the darkened windows that looked out over the city he controlled. You've been avoiding me, he said quietly, not turning around. No, Don't lie to me, Dalia. My name again, deliberate. You changed your schedule. Different hallways, different hours. He took a slow sip, amber eyes meeting mine through the reflection. Did you think I wouldn't notice? My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat. I'm just trying to do my job. Your job. He turned now, leaning against the desk, glass dangling from his fingers. Is that what you call it? Being invisible. Yes. The word came out sharper than intended. That's exactly what I call it. That's what I'm supposed to be here. Something flickered across his face, surprise, maybe, that I'd pushed back. He set the glass down carefully, studying me with that same intense focus that had undone me in the hallway. What's your full name? I'd already told him. Dalia Cruz. Where are you from? Does it matter? Answer the question. The command in his voice made my spine straighten instinctively. California. I moved here 5 years ago. Why? Why do most people move to New York? I clutched the handkerchief tighter, its bloodstains warm against my palm. For a dream that didn't work out. He nodded slowly, as if I'd revealed something more than I intended. And now you clean floors in a house where dreams come to die. Something like that. He pushed off from the desk, closing the distance between us with measured steps. Not threatening, but deliberate. Close enough that I had to tilt my head back to hold his gaze. You're afraid of me. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Yes.
Good.
His voice dropped lower, intimate. Fear means you're paying attention. He reached out slowly, giving me time to retreat, to flee, and took the handkerchief from my trembling fingers. His knuckles brushed mine, split skin rough against my palm, and something electric shot at my arm. Go home, Dalia. He stepped back, releasing me from whatever spell held us suspended. It's late. I grabbed my cart with shaking hands, nearly tripping over my own feet in my rush toward the door. His voice stopped me at the threshold. Dalia. I looked back despite every instinct screaming not to. He stood silhouetted against the amber light, the blood-stained handkerchief dangling from his fingers, expression unreadable. Thank you for returning this. The next night, I found it in my supply closet, the same handkerchief, freshly laundered, all traces of blood erased. But the monogram had changed. Where elegant initials had read FM, they now spelled something different. FM and DC. His initials.
Mine.
Embroidered together in gold thread. I stared at it, hands trembling, understanding crystallizing like ice in my veins. This wasn't curiosity. This was a claim. The handkerchief burned a hole in my locker for 2 days before I finally threw it away. Or tried to. It reappeared the next morning, folded precisely on top of my cleaning supplies, those intertwined initials gleaming like a brand. I shoved it to the bottom of my bag and tried to pretend my hands weren't shaking. But pretending became impossible when the estate itself started shifting around me. It began with small things. My schedule changed without explanation. Suddenly, I was assigned to the main gallery during evening hours when Frederick took his calls, pacing beneath Renaissance paintings while his voice carried through the halls in Italian I couldn't understand. The supervisor moved me to the second-floor library on nights when he worked late. The door cracked open, amber light spilling across marble like an invitation I never asked for. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was positioned.
Placed.
Like a piece moved deliberately across a chessboard by a player who saw the entire game while I stumbled blind. He's watching you. I jumped, nearly dropping the bottle of wood polish. Marco, one of the day staff who sometimes overlapped with my shift, stood in the doorway of the library, face grave. I don't know what you're talking about. I turned back to the shelves, focusing intently on a spot of dust that didn't exist. Dalia. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. Everyone knows. The schedule changes the way he stopped, glancing over his shoulder. Just be careful. When Mr. Marino takes interest in something, he doesn't let go. He disappeared before I could respond, leaving me alone with the leather-bound books and the weight of knowledge I didn't want. When Mr. Marino takes interest in something, he doesn't let go. I tried to remember what came before visibility. The comfortable anonymity of being furniture, ignored and safe. But the memories felt distant now, belonging to someone else entirely. Because the estate had eyes now, and they were all his. He noticed things no one should notice. The third night after the handkerchief reappeared, I found a hair tie on my supply card. Exactly the brand I used, the same brown color as the one that had snapped during my shift. No note. No explanation. Just proof that he watched me closely enough to see a broken hair tie and replace it. The fifth night, a coffee cup appeared in the break room with my name on it. Not my handwriting. Elegant script in black ink, the kind of penmanship taught in expensive private schools. Inside, the exact coffee I ordered from the bodega 3 blocks away, 2 sugars, extra cream. The cup was still warm. Asterisk, how did he know? How long had he been watching? Asterisk. I started hearing whispers everywhere. The kitchen staff fell silent when I passed. The security guards tracked me with careful eyes. Elena, my supervisor, pulled me aside one evening with hands that trembled against her clipboard. Whatever he wants, she said quietly, give it to him. Don't fight. Don't refuse. Her eyes held decades of hard-learned lessons. Women who fight don't stay long in this house. I haven't done anything. It doesn't matter what you've done. She gripped my arm, fingers tight. It matters what he's decided. And Mr. Marino has decided to see you. She walked away before I could ask what that meant. Before I could ask what happened to the women who came before me, the ones who'd been seen and then vanished from the staff roster like they'd never existed at all. That night, I changed my routine again. Started in the East Wing instead of the West, took the service elevator to floors I wasn't assigned to, worked faster, quieter, trying desperately to slip back into invisibility. But the estate had learned my patterns. Or rather, he had. I rounded the corner to the 3rd floor landing and found him there, leaning against the balcony railing, silhouetted against floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the garden. Moonlight caught in his dark hair, painted shadows across his face that made him look like something carved from marble, beautiful and cold and absolutely still. He didn't turn around.
Didn't acknowledge me.
Just stood there, waiting, knowing I had no choice but to pass him to reach my assigned wing. My footsteps echoed too loud on the marble. I kept my eyes down, gripping my cart like a shield, willing myself to be invisible again, to rewind time to before that moment in the mirror when everything shattered. You walk differently now. I froze 3 feet from him. Lighter steps. Faster. He turned his head slightly, not quite looking at me, voice contemplative. You're trying to disappear again. I'm just doing my job.
No.
He turned fully now, amber eyes finding mine in the darkness. You're running. I'm not. From me. He said it like a fact, like a conclusion drawn from evidence I didn't know I'd left behind. You changed your schedule. Avoid the main halls. Take different routes through the building. His mouth curved slightly. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Every instinct screamed at me to apologize, to placate, to make myself smaller. But something else rose up beneath the fear, something sharp and angry that had been building since the handkerchief, since the coffee cup, since I'd become a thing to be watched and catalogued and rearranged. What do you want from me? The question hung between us. Too bold, too direct. His eyes widened slightly, surprise again that I'd pushed back. I don't know yet. He answered honestly, and somehow that was more terrifying than any lie. But I'm trying to figure it out. By watching me? By moving my schedule around like I'm some kind of experiment. Yes. Simple. Unapologetic. Exactly like that. The admission stole my breath. At least lies would have left room for doubt, for pretending this was normal, professional. But Frederick Marino didn't deal in comfortable fictions. I want to be invisible again, I whispered. Something flickered across his face. Not anger. Something softer. Almost regretful. I know. But we don't always get what we want, Dalia. He moved past me then, so close I felt the heat radiating from his body, caught the scent of his cologne mixing with cigar smoke, and something underneath that was just him. His arm brushed mine, brief, deliberate, and electricity shot up my spine. Finish the West Wing tonight, he said over his shoulder. My study needs attention. Not a request. Never a request. I stood frozen until his footsteps faded, heart hammering against my ribs, skin still burning where he'd touched me. When I finally moved, my legs trembled so badly, I had to grip the cart for support. He's figured out how to corner you without ever touching you at all. The West Wing stretched vast and silent at 2 a.m. I'd left Frederick's study for last, dreading it, but the door stood open when I arrived. Lights off, room empty, just shadows and moonlight painting everything silver. I worked quickly, efficiently, trying not to think about the last time I'd been here. Trying not to remember his split knuckles or the way he'd said my name like he was learning its shape on his tongue. The security glass caught my reflection, and his. Frederick stood in the doorway behind me, perfectly still, watching. Not the way men usually watched women when they thought they were unobserved. No hunger, no aggression. Just focus. Absolute, complete focus, like I was a puzzle he was solving piece by piece. Our eyes met through the glass reflection. He didn't look away. Didn't pretend he hadn't been watching. Just held my gaze through the dark mirror, expression unreadable, something between curiosity and resignation, like he was as trapped in this as I was. I turned around slowly. How long have you been standing there? Long enough. He stepped inside, and I saw he'd changed from his usual suit into something more casual. Dark slacks, white shirt open at the collar. It made him look younger, less like the predator who ruled this estate and more like a man kept awake by thoughts he couldn't control. You tie your hair differently on Tuesdays, he said quietly. Looser. Like you're too tired to care. You hum sometimes when you think no one's listening, off-key, something your mother taught you. You avoid the mirrors in the main hall but study yourself in the service windows when you think you're alone. He paused, amber eyes burning in the darkness. You bite your bottom lip when you're nervous. You're doing it right now. I released my lip immediately, heat flooding my face. Why are you doing this? I told you. I don't know yet. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. He moved closer, and I should have stepped back, should have maintained distance, but my body refused to cooperate. You were invisible for 3 years, Dalia. 3 years I walked past you in these halls and never saw you. And then one night. He stopped, jaw tightening. One night I looked, and I couldn't stop looking. So stop. My voice cracked. Just decide to stop seeing me. If it were that simple, don't you think I would have? Frustration bled through his careful control. I've built an empire on discipline, on control. I decide when I want something, and I decide when I'm finished with it. He stopped close enough that I had to tilt my head back to hold his gaze. But I can't decide with you. Why not? Because every time I try to dismiss you from my thoughts, you do something. He gestured helplessly. You exist in ways I never noticed before. The sound of your footsteps. The way you tilt your head when you're listening. The fact that you're the only person in this house who isn't afraid to look me in the eye. I am afraid of you. I know. But you look anyway. The truth of it hung between us, undeniable. Because he was right, despite everything, despite the fear and the warnings and the knowledge of what he was capable of, I couldn't stop looking back. This isn't safe, I whispered. No, he agreed quietly. It's not. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and brushed his thumb across my cheek. The touch was gentle, almost reverent, completely at odds with the violence I knew lived in those hands. Go home, Dalia. His voice roughened. Before I forget how to let you. I fled, abandoning my cart, my supplies, and my carefully constructed walls. His reflection followed me in every window, every mirror, every polished surface that caught the moonlight. Because Frederick Marino was right. We don't always get what we want. And I desperately wanted to be invisible again. But visibility, once given, couldn't be taken back. The estate transformed for charity events the way predators donned sheep's clothing, all glittering chandeliers and champagne fountains, classical music floating through halls that usually echoed with darker negotiations. The Marino family's annual winter gala drew the city's elite like moths to flame, everyone desperate to be close to power, even if it meant risking their wings. I'd been pulled from my regular duties to help with service. Elena appeared in the break room at 6, thrust a crisp white shirt and black vest at my chest, and said simply, "You're pouring wine tonight. Stay quiet. Stay invisible." Too late for that, I thought, buttoning the vest with trembling fingers. The ballroom blazed with warm light, crystal glasses catching and fracturing it into 1,000 tiny stars. Women in gowns that cost more than my yearly salary laughed behind manicured hands. Men in tuxedos moved through the crowd like sharks, all polished menace and practiced charm. And Frederick stood at the center of it all. He wore power like a second skin, black tuxedo perfectly tailored, diamond cufflinks catching the light, dark hair styled away from his face in a way that emphasized those sharp cheekbones and amber eyes. He looked every inch the legitimate businessman, the philanthropist, the civilized man who just happened to control half the city's underground. Our eyes met across the ballroom. Something flickered in his expression, recognition, hunger, warning. Then someone claimed his attention, and I forced myself to look away. Asterisk, stay quiet. Stay invisible, asterisk. I circulated through the crowd with a tray of champagne, perfecting the art of being present but unseen. Most guests took glasses without looking at me, their eyes sliding past my face like I was part of the furniture. It should have felt familiar, safe. Instead, it made my skin crawl. Because I knew he was watching. Could feel the weight of his gaze tracking me through the crowd like a hand pressed to my spine. Well, aren't you a sight for sore eyes? I turned to find a man about Frederick's age, handsome in that polished way wealthy men achieved with expensive haircuts and whiter-than-natural teeth. He wore his tuxedo with casual elegance, diamond Rolex glinting as he reached for a champagne flute. "Thank you, sir." I kept my voice neutral, professional. "Matteo Rossi." He extended his hand like we were equals meeting at a cocktail party, not a server and a guest. "And you are?" "Dalia." I shifted the tray, hoping he'd take the hint and move on. He didn't. Instead, he studied me with interest that felt different from Frederick's intensity, lighter, playful, but no less dangerous.
Dalia.
Beautiful name for a beautiful woman. His fingers brushed mine as he took the glass, lingering just a fraction too long. "Tell me, Dalia, how does someone like you end up serving drinks at a Marino event?" "Just doing my job." "Your job." He sipped the champagne, eyes never leaving my face. "You look exhausted. Does Frederick work his staff this hard?" The familiar use of Frederick's first name marked him as someone with access, someone in the inner circle. I recognized him now from late-night meetings, one of the lieutenants who came and went with briefcases and grim expressions. "I'm fine." The automatic response. You know, there's a difference between being fine and being run into the ground. His voice dropped, intimate. "When's the last time someone made sure you ate a real meal? Got a full night's sleep?" "I really should." His hand closed gently around my wrist, stopping me. "Stay. Talk to me for a minute. Consider it a favor for a lonely man at a party full of sharks." His touch was warm, unthreatening, almost kind. Part of me wanted to pull away immediately, but another part, the part exhausted and lonely and desperate for someone to see me as human, hesitated. "I don't think." The sound of shattering glass cut through the ballroom's ambient noise like a gunshot. Conversation died. The string quartet faltered mid-note. Every head turned toward the main table where Frederick sat with the evening's most important guests. He stood perfectly still, hand outstretched, blood dripping between his fingers where crystal shards had embedded in his palm. The champagne glass he'd been holding lay destroyed on the white tablecloth, liquid spreading like spilled gold. But it wasn't the blood that stopped my heart. It was his eyes. Across the crowded ballroom, through the sea of concerned faces and frozen guests, Frederick's gaze locked on Mateo's hand wrapped around my wrist. Those amber eyes had gone completely cold, not with anger, but something far more terrifying. The absolute stillness of a predator calculating exactly how to destroy its prey. Mateo released me immediately, hands up, face draining of color.
"Shit."
"I'm fine." Frederick's voice carried across the sudden silence, calm and controlled, betraying nothing of what I'd seen in his eyes. "Just a slip. Please continue enjoying yourselves." The quartet resumed playing. Conversation started up again, nervous and too bright. But I watched Frederick excuse himself from the table, blood dripping from his clenched fist, movements precise and unhurried as he disappeared through the doors toward his private wing. He'd shattered the glass with his bare hand. "I need to." Mateo backed away from me, nearly tripping over his own feet. "Excuse me. Enjoy your evening." He fled toward the exit, and I stood frozen with my tray of champagne, understanding crystallizing like ice in my veins. Frederick hadn't shattered that glass accidentally. He'd crushed it deliberately, with his bare hand, rather than do whatever he'd wanted to do to Mateo at that moment. If you're gripped by Frederick's dangerous obsession, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, things are about to get intense. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I served drinks with mechanical efficiency, avoiding eye contact with everyone, especially the space where Frederick had been sitting. He didn't return to the ballroom. Neither did Mateo. By midnight, the guests had filtered away to their waiting cars, trailing perfume and alcohol and the satisfied exhaustion of the wealthy at play. The cleaning crew descended like locusts, erasing evidence of the party within hours. I changed back into my gray uniform, hands shaking so badly I could barely button my shirt. Elena found me in the break room, face more drawn than usual. "Go home, Dalia." She didn't meet my eyes. "Don't come back until your next scheduled shift." "What happened to?"
"Go."
"Home." Her voice cracked. "And pray he forgets about you before it's too late." I walked the 15 blocks to my apartment through streets that suddenly felt too dark, too exposed. Every shadow could hide danger. Every car that passed might be following. By the time I reached my building, I was running, heart hammering, barely able to get my key in the lock. Inside, I collapsed against the door and let myself shake. This is what his attention costs. I didn't work the next night. It was my scheduled day off. I spent it pacing my tiny apartment, jumping at every sound, checking my phone obsessively for news I didn't want to see. It came at 3 a.m. A breaking news alert lit up my screen. Tragic accident on I-95. 1 dead. I clicked with trembling fingers. The article was brief, clinical. A black Mercedes had left the highway at high speed around midnight, crashed through the barrier, and plunged into the river below. The driver, identified as Matteo Rossi, 34, was pronounced dead at the scene. Authorities suspected excessive speed and possible impairment. No other vehicles involved. The phone slipped from my numb fingers. No other vehicles involved. A convenient accident. A tragic loss. Condolences to the family. But I'd seen Frederick's eyes across that ballroom. Seen the way rage had crystallized into something cold and calculated behind that civilized mask. This wasn't an accident. This was a statement. You belong to me, and anyone who touches you pays the price. I made it to the bathroom before I was sick, heaving until there was nothing left but the bitter taste of understanding. When I finally looked up, my reflection stared back from the mirror, pale, terrified, trapped. Because Mateo hadn't done anything wrong. He'd flirted. He'd touched my wrist. He'd shown me the slightest kindness. And Frederick had killed him for it. Not in hot rage, not in a moment. He shattered that glass to keep himself from doing worse, then excused himself politely and arranged an accident that would never be questioned, never investigated, never traced back to the Marino Empire. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Asterisk, you should rest. You look exhausted. Asterisk. No signature. None needed. I hurled the phone across the room, watched it crack against the wall. But the message had already been received, already burned into my consciousness. He was watching. Always watching. I knew where I lived, when I slept, when I looked exhausted even on my day off. The surveillance had never stopped. If anything, it had intensified. And now I knew what happened to anyone who got too close. I returned to work 2 nights later because I had no choice. The medical bills didn't stop. The rent didn't pause. Survival meant showing up even when every instinct screamed to run. The estate felt different now. Quieter. Staff moved through halls with careful steps, eyes down, voices hushed. Mateo's death hung over everything like smoke you couldn't see but couldn't stop breathing. I found a single white rose on my supply cart that night. No note. Just pristine petals and thorns sharp enough to draw blood. And I understood. Frederick hadn't killed Mateo to protect me. He'd killed him to establish ownership. To make sure everyone in his world knew that the janitor, the invisible woman in the gray uniform, belonged to him now. Whether I wanted to or not. What do you think Dalia should do? Run while she still can, or stay and face Frederick's obsession? Comment below. That night, working in the 3rd floor hallway, I caught my reflection in the security glass again. And there he was behind me, watching, always watching. But this time, his expression wasn't unreadable. It was possessive. And I realized with cold certainty that invisibility hadn't been my prison. Visibility was. Because now that Frederick Marino had decided to see me, he would never look away. And anyone else who tried to see me the same way, they wouldn't survive the attempt. The first time I noticed something wrong, I convinced myself I was losing my mind. My uniform hung in my locker, pressed and folded with military precision. I'd left it crumpled at the bottom after my last shift, too exhausted to care. Now the creases were sharp enough to cut, the fabric smelling faintly of expensive detergent instead of the industrial soap we used in the staff laundry. I stared at it for a full minute, pulse hammering in my throat. Asterisk, you're paranoid. Someone from laundry services must have. Asterisk. But laundry services didn't have keys to individual lockers. And they certainly didn't press uniforms for janitors who ranked somewhere below furniture in the estate's hierarchy. I changed quickly, skin crawling, hyper-aware of the small space that suddenly felt too exposed. The locker room had no cameras, staff privacy, they said, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched anyway. My coffee cup sat on the shelf where I always left it. Plain white ceramic, chipped at the handle, the only personal item I kept here. I'd used it that morning for tea before my shift ended at dawn. Now it is gone. I checked the shelf twice, the sink, the small counter space. Nothing. Someone had taken it. Someone had been in my locker, my space, touching my things while I slept in my apartment 15 blocks away. Asterisk, stay calm. It's just a cup. You probably took it home and forgot. Asterisk. But I knew I hadn't. I never took anything home from the estate. Never blurred those lines. This was work. My apartment was the only place Frederick Marino couldn't touch. Except it could. It did. The cup reappeared 3 nights later, sitting exactly where I'd left it, as if it had never been missing at all. No explanation. No note. Just proof that my reality wasn't my own anymore. The invasions escalated. My keys disappeared from my locker pocket. I tore the room apart looking for them, panic rising with each empty drawer, each fruitless search. I'd have to report them missing, fill out forms, explain to security how I'd lost access to supply closets and maintenance areas. But when I returned for my break, they sat on the shelf next to where my coffee cup had been. Same keyring, same worn leather tag, except these keys were new, freshly cut, sharp edges catching the fluorescent light. Someone had made copies and replaced the originals so smoothly I never would have noticed if I hadn't been searching for them. Asterisk, he has keys to everything now. Every closet, every room, every space you thought was private. Asterisk. I started checking my locker obsessively. Before shifts. During breaks. After I changed. Each time, small things were different. My hand soap faced a different direction. My spare hair ties were arranged by color instead of the tangled mess I'd left them in. The schedule taped inside my locker door had been smoothed out, creases pressed flat. Someone was in here. Regularly. Touching my things. Organizing my chaos. Leaving no evidence except the unsettling precision of it all. And I knew exactly who. The maintenance system was supposed to be secure. Staff accessed it from terminals in the service areas to log work orders, check schedules, and report issues. The security feeds were separate, restricted to the guards and senior management. But at 2 a.m. on a Thursday, exhausted and desperate for proof I wasn't imagining things, I logged into the terminal in the basement maintenance office. My hands shook as I navigated through screens I technically wasn't supposed to access, looking for the surveillance records for the staff wing. The feeds were there. 12 cameras covering hallways, entrances, common areas. I clicked on the locker room corridor, expecting to see the standard security office designation in the access log. Instead, I found a single line of text that made my blood run cold. Feed rerouted. Private access, line 001. Frederick's personal security line. The one that fed directly to monitors in his private study, his bedroom, his office. He'd rerouted the cameras that watched my space to his own screens. He wasn't just having someone check on me. He was watching me himself. I checked the other cameras in the staff quarters. Same designation. Every camera that might catch a glimpse of me had been redirected to his personal feed. The timestamp showed the change had been made 4 days ago, right after Mateo's accident. My hands trembled so badly, I could barely click out of the system. I erased my login from the terminal history, a skill I'd learned from watching the night security guards cover their tracks when they streamed movies during shifts. But erasing evidence didn't change the truth. Frederick Marino was watching me. Not through intermediaries or security staff. Personally. Obsessively. Every moment I spent in the estate, he could see. That night, I couldn't focus. My cleaning routine fell apart. I scrubbed the same section of floor 3 times, knuckles white around the mop handle, mind racing through implications I didn't want to face. He watches you change. He watches you eat your sad break room meals. He watches you cry in the supply closet when you think no one can see. The violation of it crashed over me in waves. Not just that he was watching, but that he'd rearranged reality itself to make it possible. Changed my schedule to ensure I crossed his path. Rerouted cameras to maintain constant surveillance. Entered my private space to touch my things, to leave evidence of his presence, like a ghost who wanted to be known. This wasn't protection. This was possession. You've missed a spot. I spun around, mop clattering to the marble floor. Frederick stood at the entrance to the main hall, hands in his pockets, dressed casually in dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that made him look less like a Mafia boss and more like someone who could blend into normal society. The softness of the outfit made him more dangerous somehow, more human. I didn't hear you. My voice came out strangled. I know. You were thinking too loudly to notice. He moved closer, footsteps silent on the marble I'd just cleaned. Something on your mind, Dalia? Everything. Nothing. How did you answer a man who'd already seen inside your head through surveillance feeds and psychological manipulation? Just tired. The lie tasted bitter. You're always tired. He stopped close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. But tonight you're scared. More than usual. I'm not. Don't. His voice remained quiet, but something sharp edged beneath it. Don't lie to me. You know I can see it. Asterisk because you're watching. Always watching. Asterisk. What do you want? The question broke free before I could stop it. Why are you doing this? Doing what?
This.
I gestured helplessly at the space between us, at the estate around us, at the invisible cage he'd built. The schedule changes. The things in my locker. I stopped, not sure if admitting I knew about the cameras would make things better or worse. The surveillance feeds? He finished for me, and my stomach dropped. Yes, I know you access the maintenance system. Did you really think I wouldn't be alerted the moment you logged in? Heat flooded my face, shame, fear, anger all tangled together. You're watching me. All the time. Every moment I'm here. Yes. No apology. No justification. Just simple confirmation. Why? My voice cracked. I'm nobody. I clean floors. I'm mine. The word fell between us like a stone into still water, sending ripples through everything I thought I understood. You're mine, Dalia. And I like to know what belongs to me is safe. The casual certainty of it stole my breath. He said it the way someone might comment on the weather, stating a fact as obvious as gravity. I don't belong to you. The words came out trembling, weaker than I wanted, but I forced them out anyway. I'm not property. I'm not. Aren't you? He tilted his head, studying me with that unnerving focus. Tell me, Dalia, when's the last time you made a decision about your life that I didn't influence? Your schedule? Where do you work? Where are you going? He stepped closer. I know when you sleep, what you eat, how many times you check your phone before bed. I know the name of your father's hospice nurse and the balance in your checking account. My hands clenched into fists. That's not ownership. That's stalking. Call it what you want. His voice remained infuriatingly calm. The outcome is the same. You exist in my world now. In my house. Under my protection. I never asked for your protection.
No.
You asked for invisibility. Something flickered across his face. Not quite regret, but close. And I gave you visibility instead. Whether you wanted it or not. The honesty of it was worse than any lie. At least with lies, I could pretend he didn't understand what he was doing, that this was an accidental obsession spiraling out of control. But Frederick knew exactly what he was doing. I knew it was wrong, and did it anyway. This is insane. I backed away, putting distance between us even though I knew it was futile. You can't just claim people. Can't I? He spread his hands, gesture encompassing the estate, the city beyond its walls. I've built an empire on claiming things, Dalia. Territory, loyalty, power. His eyes burned into mine. You're not different. You're just more important. Why? The question came out desperate. Why me? What did I do to deserve this? You existed. He said it simply like it explained everything. You existed in my space for 3 years, invisible and safe. And then one night I looked and I saw you. Really saw you. His jaw tightened. And now I can't stop seeing you. Can't stop knowing where you are if you're safe, if you're... He stopped himself, hands clenching into fists. If I'm what? I whispered, thinking about leaving. His voice dropped lower, dangerous. Don't, Dalia. Don't even think about it. Or what? You'll kill me too? The accusation burst free before I could stop it. Like you killed Mateo? Silence crashed between us, heavy and suffocating. Frederick's expression didn't change. Didn't show guilt or remorse or even anger. Just that same terrible calm. Mateo died in an accident. You shattered a glass with your bare hand rather than do to him what you wanted to do. Yes. His eyes held mine. I did. Be grateful for my restraint. The casual admission made my knees weak. He just talked to me. He touched you. 3 words, flat and final. No one touches what's mine. I'm not. You are. He closed the distance I'd created, and this time I had nowhere to back up to. You are mine, Dalia. Whether you accept it or not. Whether you want it or not. His hand rose slowly, giving me time to flee, and cupped my face with devastating gentleness. And I will do whatever it takes to keep you safe. Even from yourself. His thumb brushed my cheekbone, and I hated how my body responded. Leaning into the touch instead of away from it, craving comfort even from the source of my terror. Please, I whispered. Just let me go.
No.
He leaned closer, breath warm against my forehead. Never. Then he released me and stepped back, leaving me trembling in the middle of the hall, his touch still burning on my skin. Finish your shift, Dalia, and go home safely. He paused at the doorway. I'll be watching. I'm always watching. He disappeared into shadow, leaving me alone with the surveillance cameras that I knew fed directly to his screens, and the terrible knowledge that every breath I took, every tear I shed, every moment of my existence was his to witness. The invisible woman had become hypervisible, and there was no escape from a gaze that never looked away. The east corridor stretched long and silent at 3 a.m, emergency lighting casting everything in dim amber that turned the marble floors to pools of honey. I'd chosen this route deliberately, the farthest path from Frederick's wing, the most isolated, the safest. I should have known better. He emerged from the shadows like he'd been waiting, positioned himself between me and the service elevator with the patience of someone who had all the time in the world. No expensive suit tonight, just dark jeans and an untucked shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked exhausted, hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it, jaw shadowed with more than his usual carefully maintained stubble. 3 a.m. and you're still working. Not a question. A statement of fact he already knew from watching. I gripped my supply cart tighter. I have a job to do. Do you ever stop? He moved closer, and I noticed the tremor in his hands before he shoved them in his pockets. Working, I mean. Do you ever just exist? The personal question caught me off guard. I exist fine. That's not what I asked. His voice carried an edge I'd never heard before. Not dangerous, but desperate. When you leave here at dawn, where do you go? What do you do? I'm going home. To an empty apartment.
He said it with certainty.
No roommates. No pets. No one is waiting for you. His eyes searched my face. Who do you talk to, Dalia? When you leave here, who knows you exist? The question hit too close to the truth. That's none of your. Do you ever think about leaving? He spoke over me, words tumbling out faster now. The city, I mean. Packing up and disappearing. Starting over somewhere I can't find you. Every single day. The honesty escaped before I could stop it. Something cracked in his expression. Why don't you? Because I'm trapped. Just like you want me to be. Anger heated my voice. My father's medical bills. The rent. The fact that I can barely afford to eat and still you. I stopped, breathing hard. You know all this. You've invaded every part of my life. Why are you asking questions you already know the answers to? Because I want to hear you say it. His hands emerged from his pockets, reaching for me. I want to hear your voice saying things that aren't just yes, sir, and polite nothings. I want. He stopped himself, jaw clenching. I don't know what I want anymore. For the first time since that night in the mirror, I saw past the predator to the man underneath. He looked lost, fractured. A man who'd built everything on control and now stood trembling in a darkened hallway, undone by a janitor he couldn't stop watching. You want to own me? I whispered.
No.
His hand found my wrist, fingers circling it gently. I want you to stay. The touch burned. I should pull away. Should run. Instead, I stood frozen as he stepped closer, close enough that I could see gold flecks in those amber eyes, smell his cologne mixed with exhaustion, and something raw underneath. Frederick. Say it again. His thumb traced my pulse point, and I knew he could feel my heart hammering. My name. Say it again. This is wrong. I know. He leaned closer, forehead nearly touching mine, voice dropping to barely a whisper. But I can't stop.
Can't stop watching you. Thinking about you.
Wanting. He trembled. Actually, I trembled. And I realized with shocking clarity that I had power here too. The power to step away. The power to destroy him with rejection. The power to lean in. I didn't move. Didn't lean away or toward him. Just existed in that suspended moment where fear and attraction tangled into something I couldn't name. His breath shuddered out against my lips, close enough to kiss but not crossing that final line. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. "Tell me to let you go." I opened my mouth. Nothing came out, because the truth was, I didn't know what I wanted anymore either. I didn't see Frederick for 3 days after the hallway. The absence felt deliberate, calculated, a withdrawal designed to make me feel his presence through its lack. I worked my shifts in hollow routine, hyper-aware of the cameras tracking my movements, wondering if he watched from wherever he'd disappeared to, or if he'd finally decided to let me fade back into invisibility. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt haunted by the ghost of his breath against my lips, the tremor in his hands, the desperate question I hadn't been able to answer. On the 4th day, Vincent Romano found me in the supply closet. Frederick's underboss was everything his boss wasn't. Loud where Frederick was quiet, crude where Frederick was refined, all blunt force where Frederick wielded surgical precision. He filled the doorway like a wall of muscle wrapped in an expensive suit that couldn't quite contain his brutality. Dalia Cruz. He didn't make it sound like a question. My hand stilled on the inventory clipboard. "Yes, you're terminated. Effective immediately." He pulled an envelope from his jacket, dropped it on the supply shelf. 2 weeks' pay. Collect your things and vacate the premises within the hour. The words hit like physical blows.
What?
Why? Don't need a reason. At will employment. His expression remained flat, bored, like firing me was just another task on a long list. "You have 1 hour. But my mind raced. The medical bills. The rent is due in 6 days. The precarious balance I'd maintained for 5 years, suddenly shattered. "Can I at least speak to?" "No." He cut me off. "Orders from the top. Pack your shit and go." He left before I could protest further, heavy footsteps echoing down the service corridor. I stood frozen, staring at the envelope that represented 2 weeks' pay when I needed months, years, forever. My hands shook as I opened it. The check was there, amount correct, impersonal company letterhead at the top. No explanation. No severance. No forwarding reference. Just get out. The locker room felt smaller than usual as I gathered my meager possessions. The coffee cup, my coffee cup, the one that had disappeared and reappeared. The hair ties are organized by color. The pressed uniform hangs with military precision. Evidence of his obsession in every carefully arranged item. I shoved everything into my bag without ceremony, fingers clumsy with shock and rising panic. This was Frederick's doing. Had to be. Vincent had said, "Orders from the top," and there was only one top in the Marino Empire.
But why?
After everything, the surveillance, the hallway confession, the desperate "I want you to want to stay, why fire me?" Unless that was the point. Unless this was his twisted way of setting me free. Or testing if I'd fight to stay. The thoughts spiraled as I changed out of my uniform for the last time, pulled on my street clothes that felt too thin, too vulnerable. When I closed the locker for the final time, the metallic clang sounded like a cell door shutting. I walked out through the service entrance I'd used for 5 years, into the November cold that bit through my jacket. Dawn hadn't broken yet. The city still slept under artificial lights and the hum of early traffic. A black car idled at the curb. My steps faltered. Every instinct screamed to run, to disappear into the subway tunnels and never look back. But my feet carried me forward anyway, drawn by invisible strings I'd never managed to cut. The rear door opened before I reached it. Frederick sat in shadow, illuminated only by the ambient glow of streetlights filtering through tinted windows. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, shirt wrinkled, sleeves rolled to his elbows, hair disheveled, jaw shadowed with stubble that had crossed from intentional to neglectful. But his eyes burned with that same terrible focus. "Get in." Not a request. Never a request. "You fired me." My voice sounded steadier than I felt. I didn't. Vincent did under orders. Your orders? Yes. He shifted forward, and the light caught the exhaustion written in every line of his face. Get in the car, Dalia.
Why?
I gripped my bag tighter, anchor in a world tilting sideways. So you can what? Offer me a new job? Make me dependent on you in different ways. So I can talk to you without surveillance feeds and marble walls between us. You're the one who put those walls there. I know. Something raw cracked through his control.
Get in the car.
The command in his voice made my spine straighten involuntarily. Years of training, of survival, of knowing when to obey dangerous men who held your life in their hands. I got in. The door closed with that same expensive softness, sealing me in leather and shadow and the scent of his cologne mixed with exhaustion. The privacy divider was up. We were alone. You can't fire me, and then I started. You don't work for the Marino estate anymore. He cut me off, voice flat. You work for me directly now. Personal staff. Better pay, better hours, better everything. I don't care what you want. The words came out harsh. Then he stopped himself, hands clenching into fists against his thighs. That came out wrong. Did it? Anger finally broke through the shock. Because it sounded exactly right. This is what you do, isn't it? Strip away every choice until the only option left is the one you've decided for me. Not a request. Never a request. You fired me. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. I didn't. Vincent did under orders. Your orders? Yes. He shifted forward, and the light caught the exhaustion written in every line of his face. Get in the car, Dalia.
Why?
I gripped my bag tighter, anchor in a world tilting sideways. So you can what? Offer me a new job? Make me dependent on you in different ways. So I can talk to you without surveillance feeds and marble walls between us. You're the one who put those walls there. I know. Something raw cracked through his control.
Get in the car.
The command in his voice made my spine straighten involuntarily. Years of training, of survival, of knowing when to obey dangerous men who held your life in their hands. I got in. The door closed with that same expensive softness, sealing me in leather and shadow and the scent of his cologne mixed with exhaustion. The privacy divider was up. We were alone. You can't fire me, and then I started. You don't work for the Marino estate anymore. He cut me off, voice flat. You work for me directly now. Personal staff. Better pay, better hours, better everything. I don't care what you want. The words came out harsh. Then he stopped himself, hands clenching into fists against his thighs. That came out wrong. Did it? Anger finally broke through the shock. Because it sounded exactly right. This is what you do, isn't it? Strip away every choice until the only option left is the one you've decided for me. Yes. The admission stunned us both. He leaned back, closing his eyes. Yes. That's exactly what I do. Because I can't, his jaw worked. I tried to let you go. Fired you. Gave you the out you've been desperate for. And then I sat in my study watching the camera feeds, waiting for you to leave, and He stopped breathing hard. You what? I couldn't do it. His eyes opened, and the vulnerability there was worse than any threat. Couldn't watch you walk away. Couldn't imagine you somewhere I can't see you, can't protect you, can't. He leaned forward suddenly, invading my space. You work for me, Dalia. You always will. That's not a request or an offer. That's reality. You can't just decide. I already have. He reached past me and I flinched, but he only pulled out another envelope from the seat pocket. Thicker than the first. Your father's medical bills. Paid in full. Your rent for the next year.
Paid.
Student loans.
Gone.
Every financial chain that's drowning you broken. He dropped the envelope in my lap. Inside, I could see documents, checks, proof of payments I couldn't afford to refuse. This is a cage, I whispered. A different one, but still a cage. I know. No apology in his voice. but it's a gilded one. And you'll be safe in it. I don't want to be owned. Too late. He settled back, and the exhaustion made him look almost human. Almost vulnerable. You've been mine since the moment I saw you in that mirror. I just made it official. The car pulled away from the curb, and I realized I'd never told the driver where I lived. But of course, Frederick already knew.
He knew everything.
Where are we going? My voice came out small. Home. He stared out the window. Your things are already being moved to staff quarters in the main house. Better security. Closer to... He stopped himself. Closer to you. Yes. The noose tightened with every block we drove. And the worst part? The envelope in my lap represented freedom from 5 years of financial drowning, which meant my cage was lined with everything I'd ever needed. And I didn't know how to hate him for it. The new quarters were a gilded cage, exactly as he'd promised. A suite in the main house's east wing, bedroom, bathroom, small sitting area with windows that overlooked the garden. Everything is tasteful, expensive, and suffocating. My belongings had been moved with surgical precision, arranged in ways that mimicked my old apartment but felt fundamentally wrong, like a museum recreation of a life I used to live. I lasted 3 days before I realized what was missing. My father's necklace. A simple silver chain with a compass pendant, tarnished and worn from his years wearing it before the cancer, made his neck too sensitive for jewelry. He'd given it to me the day I left for New York, pressed it into my palm with shaking hands, and said, asterisk, so you can always find your way home. Asterisk. I'd kept it in my locker at the estate, too afraid to wear it, too precious to leave at my apartment. In the chaos of being fired and relocated, it had been left behind. I had to get it back. I waited until 2 a.m. when even Frederick's obsessive watching might falter. The estate keys I still had, old copies he'd made and replaced, let me into the service entrance. The building breathed around me, familiar and foreign, no longer mine to move through freely. The locker room stood empty. My old locker was already reassigned, and the lock changed. But I knew the maintenance override codes and had watched the night supervisor use them 100 times. The locker opened with a soft click. Empty. Completely empty. Cleaned out, sanitized, ready for the next invisible person who would occupy this space.
No.
I tore through the other lockers, desperate, knowing it was futile. Someone had cleared everything, thrown it away or cataloged it, or the greenhouse. Frederick had a private greenhouse on the north side of the estate, climate-controlled glass and exotic plants he tended himself in rare moments of solitude. I'd seen my necklace once in his study and had assumed it was a trick of light. But if he'd taken my things, if he'd kept anything, the greenhouse glowed like a lantern in the darkness, condensation frosting the glass walls, making everything inside shimmer like a dream. I tried the door. Unlocked. Warmth and humidity hit me immediately. The air smelled of earth and jasmine, orchids blooming in impossible colors, vines crawling up trellises toward the glass ceiling. Moonlight filtered through the mist, turning everything silver and strange. And there, on a small table near the center, next to pruning shears and a watering can, sat my father's necklace. Relief crashed through me so hard my knees nearly buckled. I reached for it, fingers closing around familiar worn silver. I wondered how long it would take you to come looking. I spun around. Frederick stood among the vines, materialized from shadow and mist like he'd been waiting. No suit tonight. Just dark pants and a white shirt open at the collar, sleeves rolled up, feet bare on the stone floor. He looked like he'd been here for hours, tending his plants, seeking refuge in the only place where life followed rules he could understand. That's mine. My fingers tightened around the necklace. I know. He stepped closer, moving through moonlight and shadow. Your father gave it to you. Richard Cruz, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, 3 months to live when you moved to New York. He lasted 2 years. You sent him every penny you could spare, worked yourself to exhaustion trying to buy him more time. Each fact landed like a blow. Stop. He died 6 months ago. You scattered his ashes in the Pacific, took a bus because you couldn't afford to fly, and came back to New York because there was nothing left in California but ghosts. His voice remained soft, reciting my grief, like reading from a file. That necklace is all you have left of him. Then why did you take it? The question came out broken. Because I knew you'd come back for it. He stopped close enough that I could see the exhaustion bruising beneath his eyes, the tremor in his hands he couldn't quite control. I needed you to come back. You could have just asked, and you would have refused. His mouth twisted. You're terrified of me, Dalia. Rightfully so. But you'd walk through fire for that necklace. For the last piece of your old life. The life before. Before you destroyed it? Yes. The admission came easier than it should have. Before I saw you and couldn't see you. Before I made you visible and hated myself for it. The vulnerability in his voice made my chest ache. You don't belong in my world, he continued, each word deliberate. You're good.
Kind.
You work yourself to death for people who don't deserve it. And he gestured helplessly at himself. I'm violence in an expensive suit. I kill people who touch what's mine. I ruin everything I decide to keep. Then let me go. I clutched the necklace hard enough that the compass edge cut into my palm. Just decide to unsee me. Go back to before. Don't you think I've tried? His voice rose, control fracturing. Every night I tell myself to delete the surveillance feeds, to stop tracking your location, to let you disappear into the city and live your life. And every night he stopped breathing hard. I can't. Physically, I cannot make myself stop. That's not love, Frederick. That's an obsession. I know the difference. He moved closer, and I saw his hands shaking openly now. This is both. And it's destroying me. I backed away instinctively. He followed, matching my steps, closing distance until my back hit the glass wall, and there was nowhere left to retreat. Do you have any idea what you've done to me? His voice dropped to barely above a whisper, rough with something between anger and desperation. I built an empire on control, on discipline, on knowing exactly what I want, and taking it without hesitation. His hand came up, braced against the glass beside my head, caging me. And then you existed. Just existed in my space, cleaning my floors, avoiding mirrors, and suddenly I can't control anything anymore. I didn't ask for this. Neither did I. The outburst shocked us both. He pulled back, running, shaking hands through his hair. You think I wanted this? Wanted to become the kind of man who watches a woman sleep through surveillance cameras? Who kills people for the crime of making her smile? Who pays off her debts just to trap her closer? He laughed, bitter and broken. I'm losing my mind, Dalia. Losing control of my own empire because I can't stop thinking about you. Wondering if you're eating enough. If you're cold. If you hate me as much as you should. I do hate you. But the words came out wrong. Too soft, lacking conviction. Liar. He turned back, and something wild lived in his eyes now. You hate what I've done. What I represent. But you don't hate me. If you did, you wouldn't look at me the way you do. Wouldn't lean into my touch in that hallway. Wouldn't be standing here arguing instead of running. Maybe I just finally saw something you can't own. I lifted my chin, even as my heart hammered against my ribs. My hatred. My resistance. The part of me that will never submit no matter how many cages you build. The words hit him like a physical blow. He stumbled back a step, and that's when I saw it. The gun. Tucked into the back of his waistband, black grip catching the moonlight. My breath stopped. Are you going to kill me? The question came out steadier than I felt. Is that what this is? You brought me here to...
No.
He pulled the gun out, but his hands shook so badly, he nearly dropped it. No, He stared at the weapon like he'd forgotten he was carrying it. I brought this because I thought. He didn't finish. I didn't need to, because I understood. He'd brought the gun for himself. For the moment when the obsession became too much, controlling everything meant losing control of the only thing that mattered. For the moment when the man who never lost finally accepted defeat. Frederick. His name escaped as barely a breath. I'm not going to hurt you, He said it like a promise, like an oath, still holding the gun but not pointing it anywhere, just gripping it like an anchor. I would never, God, Dalia, I've done terrible things, but I would never. I know. And somehow I did. Understood that his violence was reserved for the world that might harm me, never for me directly. That his obsession was a cage built to keep danger out, even if it meant locking me in. Then why do you look at me like I'm a monster? Because you are. The truth fell between us, soft and devastating. But you're also the man who tends orchids at 2 a.m. because you can't sleep. Who watched me through cameras not just to control me, but because you were lonely. Who's standing here trembling because you finally want something you can't take by force. His jaw clenched. What do I do? How do I fix this? You can't. I pushed off from the glass wall, closing the distance he'd created. You can't unsee me. Can't undo the surveillance or the ultimatums or Mateo's death. Can't make yourself stop wanting what you've decided is yours. Then what? You let me choose. The words came out firm, clear. You stop deciding for me. Stop manipulating and controlling and watching. You give me back my autonomy and let me decide if I want to stay. And if you choose to leave, his voice cracked. Then you let me go. I held his gaze, even as tears burned behind my eyes. You delete the feeds. You stop tracking me. You let me disappear back into invisibility, and you live with the fact that you can't own everything you want. The gun trembled in his grip. I don't know if I can do that. Then you've already lost me. The words hung between us, absolute and final. I watched them hit him, watched the truth crack through his carefully constructed control. The man who'd built empires on force and will, undone by one woman who refused to be owned. The gun clattered to the stone floor. He stood there, arms hanging at his sides, expression stripped of everything but raw vulnerability. I don't want to lose you. Then let me go. I pressed my father's necklace against my chest. Really let me go. No surveillance. No manipulation. No gilded cages. Let me walk out of here and decide for myself what I want. And if you never come back, then I never come back. I moved toward the door, each step harder than the last. And you live with being the man who finally saw something worth having but couldn't stop destroying it. I made it 3 steps before his voice stopped me. Dalia. I didn't turn around. If you come back, his voice broke. If you choose this, choose me, despite everything I've done, then you'll know it's real. I finished for him. Not control or obsession or possession, but real. I walked out into the night, leaving Frederick Marino standing alone among his orchids and shadows, undone by the janitor who taught him what it meant to be truly seen. And for the first time since that night in the mirror, I was invisible again.
By choice.
7 days of silence. I stayed in my old apartment, the one I'd thought I'd lost, returning to find the locks unchanged, the rent mysteriously paid through the end of the lease. No notes. No messages. Just absence where obsession used to live. The surveillance stopped. I checked, compulsively, paranoidly, for signs of watching. Moved furniture to find hidden cameras, searched my belongings for tracking devices, varied my routes home to catch anyone following. Nothing. Frederick Marino had let me go, and the freedom felt like drowning. I spent those 7 days remembering how to exist without eyes on me. Slept past dawn without jolting awake. Bought coffee without wondering if he knew my order. Walked through the city as one anonymous person among millions, invisible again by choice. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like grief. Because somewhere in the twisted architecture of surveillance and control, I'd started to feel seen. Not as property or possession, but as someone worthy of absolute attention. Frederick's obsession had been suffocating, but it had also been proof that I existed, that I mattered, that someone in this vast and different city knew my name and couldn't stop speaking it. Now I was free, and utterly alone. On the 8th day, I bought a train ticket to California. There was nothing left for me in New York. No job, no reason to stay, no ties except the ghost of a man who'd learned to let go. California held nothing either. My father's ashes scattered in the Pacific, no family, no home, but at least it wouldn't echo with what I'd lost. Penn Station buzzed with pre-holiday travelers, everyone rushing toward destinations that mattered, toward people who waited for them. I sat on a bench near track 7, single bag at my feet containing everything I owned, waiting for the 3:15 to Los Angeles. The departure board flickered. 20 minutes. I clutched my father's necklace, the compass warm against my palm. So you can always find your way home, but home had stopped meaning California years ago. Had stopped meaning my apartment. Had maybe never meant a place at all, but a feeling I'd been chasing my whole life. The feeling of being seen, and choosing to be seen anyway. Your train is late. My heart stopped. Frederick stood 3 feet away, and he looked like he'd aged years in 7 days. Expensive coat rumpled, hair uncombed, jaw shadowed with a week's growth of beard that had crossed from deliberate to desperate. But it was his eyes that destroyed me, red-rimmed, hollow, stripped of everything except exhaustion, and something that looked like surrender. How did you? I started. I didn't follow you. He held up his hands, empty, proving something. I stopped tracking you the night you left the greenhouse. Haven't looked at a single camera feed. Haven't sent anyone to watch. His mouth twisted. I just knew you'd run eventually. And this is where people run from. He moved closer, each step careful, like approaching something wild that might bolt. When he reached my bench, he didn't sit. Just stood there, swaying slightly, exhausted beyond measure. I came to give you something. He pulled a folded envelope from his coat. Thick, legal-sized, worn at the edges like he'd been carrying it for days. Before you disappear, where I can't find you. He placed it on the bench beside me. Not in my hands, that would have been control. Beside me, where I could choose whether to take it. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside, a deed. Property transfer documents. Legal papers with official seals and notarized signatures. The address made my breath catch. 2847 Maple Street, Sacramento, California. My childhood home. The house where my father had raised me before medical bills forced him to sell it, where I'd learned to cook in his kitchen and read on the porch swing, and believed the world was fundamentally safe. The house I'd lost 8 years ago. Now transferred to my name. Mortgage paid in full. Property taxes covered for the next decade. I don't understand. The words came out broken. I bought it 6 months ago. Frederick's voice remained flat, carefully controlled. When I first started noticing you, before the mirror, before any of this became, he stopped, jaw clenching. I thought if I bought you back the thing you'd lost, it would satisfy whatever this was. That giving you what you needed would make you less necessary. And did it? I looked up, meeting those haunted amber eyes.
No.
The admission came quietly. It made everything worse. Because I'd see you scrubbing floors at 3 a.m. and know you could be home. In your actual home. Safe and rested and free. But you were here instead, trapped by circumstances I could fix with a phone call. His hands clenched into fists. And I didn't give it to you because giving it to you meant you'd leave. The departure board flickered. 15 minutes. So you kept it. I stared at the deed, proof of obsession and care tangled so completely I couldn't separate them. As insurance. As leverage. As hope. He corrected quietly. Maybe someday you'd choose to stay, and I could give it to you anyway. Not as a cage, but as proof that he stopped himself. That I see you. The words came out raw. Really see you. Not as property or a thing to control, but as Dalia Cruz, 26 years old, who moved to New York with dreams she sacrificed for someone she loved. Who works until exhaustion becomes a permanent state. Who's kind to people who don't deserve it and strong in ways I'll never be. He swayed again, and I realized he probably hadn't slept since the greenhouse. Who taught a monster what it meant to want something more than power. Tears burned behind my eyes. Frederick, the house is yours. No strings. No conditions. Whether you get on that train or not. Whether I ever see you again or not. He stepped back, creating distance. I thought giving you back your life would help me forget you. And did it?
No.
His voice cracked completely. Nothing helps. Nothing works. I still wake up reaching for surveillance feeds I deleted. Still listen for your footsteps in hallways you'll never walk again. Still see your reflection in every mirror, and no, it's not real. The PA system crackled. Asterisk, now boarding track 7 to Los Angeles. All passengers please proceed to track 7. Asterisk, my train. My escape. My chance at freedom without ghosts. I stood, picking up my bag. Frederick's face went carefully blank, preparing himself for the ending he'd known was coming. Thank you, I said quietly, folding the deed back into the envelope. For this. For letting me go. For becoming the kind of man who could. Dalia. My name on his lips sounded like a prayer, like a plea. I need time. The truth fell between us, soft but absolute. Time to figure out who I am without surveillance cameras. Without someone watching every breath. Time to remember what it feels like to choose things for myself. I understand. He didn't. I could see him fracturing, but he held himself together through sheer will. Be safe. Be happy. Be, his voice broke. Be everything you couldn't be with me. I walked toward track 7, each step heavier than the last. Made it 10 feet before I stopped. Turned back. Frederick stood exactly where I'd left him, hands at his sides, face stripped of every defense. A man who'd ruled the city with fear, reduced to someone who couldn't even control his own heartbreak. He looked smaller somehow, less like a predator, and more like someone who'd lost the only thing that mattered. Frederick. His name barely whispers. He looked up, and the hope that flashed across his face before he could smother it destroyed me. If. I stopped, choosing my words carefully. If in a month, or 6 months, or a year I come back. If I choose to come back on my own terms, without control or cages or surveillance. Then I'll be here. He answered immediately. However long it takes. Whatever terms you set. I'll be here. You might wait forever. I know. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. But forever watching surveillance feeds was destroying me. Forever waiting for you to choose me might actually save what's left. The final boarding call echoed through the station. I memorized his face, exhausted, haunted, stripped bare. Then I turned and walked through the gates to track 7, where the train waited to carry me toward a home I'd thought I'd lost. Behind me, Frederick Marino stood in the empty station, watching me disappear into the crowd. Not following. Not controlling. Just letting me go. And somehow, that act of restraint said more than all his obsession ever had. Want to know if Dalia ever comes back? If Frederick can truly change? Click on the subscribe button. Comment below, would you give Frederick another chance? Through the train window, as we pulled away from the station, I caught one last glimpse of him. Frederick Marino, the man who'd built an empire on control, standing alone on platform 7, watching the train carry away the one thing he'd learned he couldn't own. He looked small in the distance. Humans. Breakable. A man who'd once ruled the city with fear. Now haunted by the janitor, who taught him what it meant to be seen. I pressed my palm against the window, not waving goodbye, just acknowledging. He raised his hand in response, not reaching, not following, just accepting. Then the train rounded a curve, and he disappeared from view. I clutched the deed to my childhood home and my father's compass necklace, and for the first time in years, I cried. Not from fear or exhaustion or grief, but from the strange, terrible beauty of being free. Free to leave. Free to mourn. Free to maybe someday choose to return. But that choice was mine now. And Frederick Marino, the man who'd never lost control, had given me the only gift that mattered. The power to walk away. Whether I'd use it to disappear forever or eventually come back, that was a story still being written. One choice at a time. One breath of freedom at a time. Until the day I'd know for certain what home really meant. If you enjoyed this story, like, subscribe, and share with others so they can learn too. See you in our next video.